You continue to watch our conversations here from Davos 2025, and as we've been telling you, it's either about President Trump or it's about AI, and there's quite literally nothing in between. Joining us now is a man who is spending all of his time focused on digital transformation and what corporations are doing to adopt many of the new technologies, including, of course, AI. Nigel, many thanks for joining us. It's great to have you back here in Davos. So, as I said, nothing in between. It's Trump or AI, and AI was the theme here last year as well, but what we're hearing this time around, that it's a little bit more real.
Absolutely. And I think what you saw is companies move out of the proof of concept, trialing stage, and starting to really recognize that this is as fundamental a shift as the move from steam to electricity. Right. I think, there's lots of analogies being used, but primarily speaking, every aspect of business can be reimagined. From a Publicis Sapient perspective, a lot of the work we're doing with clients now involves building agentic architectures where you have very specific agents acting almost as a digital workforce, in part alongside your traditional workforce, doing very specialized things, from healthcare to retail and financial services. Every one of these things now is moving businesses forward pretty substantially.
Yeah, that clearly is the theme here. Agentic AI is what a lot of people are talking about, but you talked about how the digital workforce is working alongside the traditional workforce today. But do you see a divergence between that, and how soon can we expect that divergence to take place, if at all?
I don't see a divergence. I almost see it as a convergence. So if you think about, the way we think about this is like Iron Man. You've got a person in a suit. If you don't make investments in the suit, you just have a very good person. Yeah. But if you make investments in the person and the suit and you bring them together, you get a superhero. And it's almost that idea of how technology and people are going to need to coexist fundamentally, where you're now starting to value people not just on their own abilities, but on their abilities to leverage this technology. I mean, one of the things we've done at Sapient is built a platform we call Slingshot, which we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in, building a lot of the expertise we've had over 30 years of transforming business into this. And even in our organization, as we bring new people on, we're constantly saying to them, look, we want you to leverage technology and the capabilities you bring. It's not either or. And it's not competition to show how much better you are without the technology. It's about saying how you can bring these two things together to accelerate.
But what is the pace of adoption now as you talk to your clients, from Marriott to McDonald's? What are we talking about in terms of the speed as well as the scale of adoption?
The adoption right now, I think, has moved from testing AI in the context of specific use cases to now broad-based applications. Where companies are recognizing that by connecting different data sources in their organizations, they're able to do things across customer service, sales, and marketing that they were just not able to do. When you think about, personalized marketing offers based on the last action you had. When you think about allowing you to pick your own hotel room based on the view or the personal preference you express. When you think about room allocations, every one of these things now can be automated on the basis of data that you have shared with these organizations for the purpose of them actually helping you. So now as you start to see that evolve, I think there's a real opportunity.
But is it more in terms of IT spends, or is it a reallocation of capital as far as the existing IT spends were concerned?
I think definitely most organizations will tell you, and most CEOs in Davos will tell you, that there's no magic tree where they can shake to generate more money. So I think a lot of this is essentially about how do they fundamentally look at the inefficiencies in their business. We're doing large programs in a number of industries. In one case, a 10-year mainframe migration, which is not a project that Sapient would typically do, because it was a low-cost, large-scale, low-cost offshoring type operation. Now using our platform and using AI, our tools in AI, that program's taking 3 years to do, which means it's freeing up so much capital for the company to reinvest in more transformative initiatives. It's the same thing when you think about how call center first-time right handling, when you start to think about marketing messaging, every one of these things being more efficient means you're freeing up more capital for folks to actually do things better.
Speaking of doing things better as well as large spends, I don't know if you got the overnight announcement that came in from President Trump about the $500 billion between
Stargate.
Stargate. I mean, when you hear numbers like that, What does it mean eventually as far as the ecosystem is concerned? What does it mean in terms of the opportunities that could potentially open up?
I started by using a power analogy at the beginning, right?
Yes.
And it's saying, I do think AI is going to be as ubiquitous as electricity. And when you start to think about what that means, is in the same way that you saw massive capital infrastructure investments in electricity, whether it was nuclear, whether it was traditional power plants, in order to power what was effectively the Industrial Revolution, I think you're now going to start to see the same in this massive AI transition. One of the biggest things that come, and it's not just the United States, it's the UAE, it's Saudi Arabia, it's India, it's China. All of these markets are making massive investments because they realize without that underlying infrastructure, companies are going to struggle, particularly when you move beyond the Fortune 500, to start to leverage a lot of this capability to really reinvent business. And I mean, India's done a phenomenal job of establishing, public-private partnerships with payments, with national identity, which has accelerated millions of
digital
people
adoption,
into digital adoption. And I think what you're going to start to see with AI now, countries realizing that unless you start to make these infrastructure investments, you're not going to see the same kind of progress that you want to see.
Well, you talked about India, but let's talk about your business in India specifically. It is one of your largest in terms of headcount for Publicis. So, take me through the view on India, what the outlook is from here on.
We're extraordinarily excited about India. When you start to think about where the world is moving to a very literate, English-driven, technologically driven workforce, and India has all of those things in spades. Our workforce in India continues to do some of our most pioneering work. Some of the platforms I talked about building, whether it's agentic platforms for industries, a lot of that work happens in global teams, but driven in large part by our teams in India. One of the things we observe about India, though, is I feel like there's a huge opportunity, but also a huge disruption to the traditional hierarchy of Indian IT services. I think historically IT services were about cost arbitrage in the context of India. So you scale businesses on a cost arbitrage basis. What we're seeing now is this next generation,
which is the move towards innovation.
Absolutely, which you have to start to do to move towards innovation, but also recognizing the fact that AI is going to mean a significant amount of disruption to those lower cost, lower paid cost arbitrage jobs. And I think what you're starting to see is the Sapient model in India, which was always focused on the very best engineering talent, people who we were always competing with the startups, not with the traditional IT services space, because we were looking for those people who were real builders in the organization, people who were looking to pioneer stuff. And I feel like when we think about India now, it creates another huge opportunity for real disruption there.
Well, yes, we will look at the opportunities that AI throws up in India. And thanks very much, Nigel, for joining us here in Davos to take us through what you make of the move towards agentic AI and where we find ourselves. Thanks very, very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We will take a break, but the conversations continue here in Davos. We're back in a moment with a lot more. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there.